extremely optimistic, forward-looking, always another opportunity, another chance, another way to get it right. Sagittarius stuff. Now, the opposite of truth is dishonesty or lying. The phenomenon of lying as such, meaning to be dishonest, is also Sagittarius. One of the reasons that this occurs is the linkage to the Virgo archetype and the underlying issue of inadequacy or inferiority. When this is the operational motive, a Sagittarian will in fact either embellish a story, exaggerate a story, make it bigger than it was, or absolutely lie. And this is a reflection of Virgo square. It's a compensation for inadequacy. I'm sorry.
Does Neptune and Pisces have an effect on the business of lying?
I'm sorry.
Do you associate lying with Pisces?
As it connects to Sagittarius and the actual manifestation through Pisces is creating purposeful deception to mislead.
Usually lie to protect themselves rather than hurt someone else.
That's a classical cause, yeah.
Defensive lying.
But the issue there manifests as deception, or to generate an illusion or delusion passed off as truth.
I think one of the problems with Sagittarius is that you can exaggerate or even lie and convince yourself very quickly yourself that what you're saying is true, and then you really feel it is true.
Well, and that's when you do the first homework. I mean, a lot of people have a problem with this first chart, but because first of all, the Archlock was born in Sicily, and I don't know who have a real high opinion of Sicily in the end, but you know. In any case, this guy's got Neptune in the 9th in Scorpio and squaring his nodal axis, and it was one of the classic signatories for a pathological liar, is what you're describing. And a pathological liar is just what you described, somebody who believes in their lie to the point where it's their truth. And see, one of the great mind fucks of, trying to stop swearing, one of the great, God, what would be another word?
Deception.
Yeah. One of the, let's say, more amazing dimensions of Sag, they can seem so utterly sincere. Why? Because Sagittarius is that which is rooted in nature. So it's through the natural kind of sincerity that Sagittarius has that allows the dynamic of pathological lying to actually occur. Because it's through sincerity that others will believe. See?
I'm totally thinking of Ken Stark. He's got to have something in mind.
He's got South Node in Sag.
And the way he presents with that smile and...
And underneath that's an absolute sadist, as you can see.
Yeah, definitely. And he's a liar.
I bet he had great fun writing all of his reports with that Mars Venus standing there in Virgo in the 8th. Vicarious sex, remember? It's a no inadequacy. So guess what he was doing in that room? Huh? So, that was his de facto sexual act. Huh? Okay. Probably put a condom on just to think it was real. But go ahead. I have Jupiter and Scorpio humor. Oh, gallows humor.
If someone's Neptune in the 9th is squaring your nose, what is that? Someone else's placement?
That they've, well, the other application of Neptune in the 9th is such an absolute orientation to truth. There's such a no tolerance for anything. So this is where you have to establish the whole context. I mean, obviously it can mean an individual who's lied to you in the past, who's truly tried to deceive, Neptune, mislead, duress. present these rainbow scenarios that turn out to bust up and turn into nothing, like smashing a balloon. So we have these applications. And again, Sagittarius is extremely restless. It's always attracted to what we can call the next horizon. Whereas the current horizon is something less than satisfactory, which then fuels the restlessness. Let's see what else. The coordination of the body, by the way, is reflected through Sagittarius. And as a result, given that you have an Aries-Leo connection, one of the applications of Sagittarius in a mundane sense is called sports or physical activity, and which reflects restlessness. So Sagittarius has a lot of need for physical activity / sport. It's really a way of burning off physical energy. Sagittarius typically has a naturally athletic body. They tend to be more tall and thin as a typing.
I have also experienced that a good aspect between Jupiter and Mars almost always produces an athlete. The drive to win, plus the legs and hips strength. I've also been able to identify Sagittarius very often by just the way they move. They move like animals. Dance their buns off, especially when they dance and run.
So they can be big clusters too, though.
They're intrinsically, that's because there's a natural absent-mindedness.
Oh, that's right.
Remembering where that arrow is pointing, so they're not always present.
And so, because they're physical, so
It's accident-prone.
so I'm constantly smashing.
Right. Well, it's what, a good way to put it is China, or a elephant in a china shop. Tell me about it. I know, I get tired of spending money on the fuckers, but in the glasses.
What would be the difference between being Sagittarius sun or an ascendant sun? Because it seems that in the Western astrology, a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a Sag or I'm a Leo or I'm a whatever," based on the sun sign. Yet, I understand that the ascendant is as well very important in determining the personality or the, as you said before, the instinctual reaction. So my question was, what would be the difference in terms of that personality of any person between...
Just to understand the difference of the archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
Sun's an integration principle. I integrate my entire life purpose, my entire life experience, through a Sagittarian perspective.
Mm-hmm. And the ascendant would be just the instinctual reaction.
That's a process of becoming relative to a new evolutionary cycle. Mm-hmm. The Sagittarius is emphasized. What does that suggest to you? What's the soul trying to accomplish as a lead point in its current state of evolution? It's Sagittarius. But it's not an integration point. It's a point that a person is moving towards. Do you see my point? And relative to the perpetual process of becoming.
Yeah.
Also, as far as your physicality, like what you look like, and you say Sagittarius physical, but is it also sun or ascendant? I thought you looked more usually like your ascendant, or can it be also?
The ascendant has obviously a link to the body and the head.
If you have Jupiter conjunct your ascendant, you just may show some Sagittarius movement characteristics.
Right here, you're looking at it. You're looking at it. Jupiter on the ascendant. And Scorpio. So, what's interesting in Scorpio, you tend to find three body types. One type is really thin, i.e. to condense, essence. I don't want any more weight than I have to have. Then you have the balloonist types. These are folks that feel so darn threatened by life, they put on weight to buffer. Yes?
That's Sagittarius.
Scorpio.
Okay.
Then you have a midpoint, and these folks I guess the English word would be stocky. There you go. Stocky. Yeah. And which is also a protection device. So they're in the midpoint.
Because I used to date a guy who was he was a Libra rising, and he was a Sun Scorpio, and he had incredible grace, like the way he moved and things like that. But he also had this incredible sharp kind of. It seemed the perfect combination of the two.
Yeah.
The Scorpio on the inside, Sag is the skin, the shell. You have to break some eggs to get at the real stuff.
So Sagittarius, Jupiter 9th has then, you can link it to any kind of belief system / philosophy. And when you play the role of evolutionary detective / evolutionary astrologer, you can determine really why any given individual is orientated or choosing whatever belief system in whatever life. And because the answer in all cases is a reflection of their evolutionary dynamics, what they need to be believing in whatever life, as a function of their evolutionary intent or purpose. And so when we understand it this way, who is to stand back and judge, i.e., I mean, if you're seeing a client, they have a current belief system, unless they're asking you whether they should change it, it's not your job to get in there and say, wait a minute, you understand my point? Because they need it. It's part of what they have to do with this life. So we need to remember that sort of thing. Jupiter has direct connection to the right brain as a result, i.e. nonlinear, abstract, and conceptual. The intuition. This is why a lot of Sagittarians, you'll hear a typical statement, natural intelligence, native intelligence, this kind of thing. Naturally intelligent. One of the great things of Sagittarius is the capacity to absorb, integrate, and understand a tremendous volume of information almost at once. You can see this reflected as an example in President Clinton, South Northern Sag. He's been now called one of the most intelligent presidents of all time.
Sagittarians, this is the feeling that I've had, that Sagittarians have instant insight. They don't have to think about it. Bam.
That's intuition.
They've got it.
That's intuition. That's intuition.
What about Aquarius?
That's the Uranian flash snapshot. That even bypasses intuition. Comes straight out of the subconscious. And it's in your brain like a lightning bolt. The way Sagittarius works, it contemplates something for a moment, and then the intuition kicks in.
Well, Uranians don't have to fool around with it.
It happens instantaneously. They don't even know where the fuck it's coming from.
Well, in your book on Uranus, the main thing I learned about it is that Uranus takes things apart and pushes them back together in a different way.
Yeah, and the symbol for that is, I throw a hand grenade right here, and this thing gets blown up, and it comes back to Earth in a new pattern. That's Uranus.
Oh, they could bulldoze the whole building down or blow it up.
Sure. Go for it, Walter. Okay. So another way to explain Sagittarius in most cases is that what you see is what you get. They're that aligned with itself.
More so than Aries?
Aries is what you see is what you get also.
They're both fire signs, that's it.
And pretty much the same as about Leo. They're so busy just simply acting out that they don't have a time to hide.
I heard the ones that fire signs, of all the signs, the fire signs don't need any reason to be.
They're just being.
I don't have to explain myself.
Jeffrey, you just made the statement about that we can determine the belief patterns of any client as evolutionary astrologer, and as long as they don't ask, we don't mind their business. But what if, like, most of their suffering or problems you're talking about, whether it comes from their belief pattern, i.e., being, defined by patriarchal belief patterns?
That's a good question. And when you're making that specific observation, and especially if the person's questions involve their suffering, then that's a legitimate lead point. So,
especially right now because Pluto's going for Sash.
So if that's
Exactly.
you pose a question to them that might evoke them to ask you to ask that question.
yeah, exactly. You bet. Sometimes, it's the best astrologers don't mind appearing wrong sometimes to some clients, because sometimes gifted astrologers see that the only way a person will move in a specific direction that the astrologer is estimating they should move into is by saying something that's actually not true. And by the client taking that in, it actually enforces the movement towards that direction. So it's a real art. And, and you just have to be secure enough in yourself to let the person think that you're wrong.
Have you done that?
A lot. A lot. In this class.
Are you looking for it?
I'll keep my secrets to myself. Oh, Jupiter and Scorpio.
In your case, you're Sagittarius with Scorpio rising, and I've heard that Scorpio is very secretive, yet Sagittarius is like wanting to say. How can you keep secrets to yourself? I mean, in
To
a
my
way,
children?
is it easy to keep secrets?
Oh, it's absolutely easy when you keep secrets.
Even if you're a Sagittarius sun?
The Sagittarian sun will, in a relevant scenario, share that secret. If it's necessary. But only with the person's permission. That's Sag. So, anatomy and physiology. Jupiter has direct correlation with the pituitary gland, co-ruled with Saturn. Has a direct application to the thyroid, and the ability to see. This is really something to understand, because a lot of times Sagittarius will expand so far that they can't assimilate. And like an example, in a mundane sense, Jupiter correlates with urban sprawl or unchecked growth. And similarly, one's consciousness can correlate with urban sprawl, i.e. unchecked growth. I mean, there's no assimilation. And this very same phenomena can be reflected through the thyroid. The thyroid has a critical role, of course, in terms of how we're assimilating the nutrients that we're putting into our body. Correlates exactly to your metabolistic rate, to metabolize. And how metabolism itself is directly connected to how you perceive time. It emanates all kinds of growth hormones and so on. And
would that also be connected to Capricorn? The metabolic rate?
the metabolic rate?
Would that also be connected to...
The metabolistic rate is specific to Jupiter. The time as a phenomenon is Saturn. Perception, how we perceive, is Scorpio. Perception. So, as an example, or a way to validate this very quickly is most of us, since when Uranus, Neptune went into Capricorn, most people on this earth suddenly had a sense, and a real sense of time speeding up. Who didn't have that experience? And yet there was still 24 hours in the day. So what is the deal here? is clearly a perceptual issue. So an example, one of the critical chemicals that allow the thyroid to operate correctly is iodine. And iodine in astrology connects to Saturn. And so now check this out. Look at the simple mechanism. Uranus transits Capricorn. One of the physiological actions of Uranus is to dehydrate. At the very same time, whatever Uranus touches, when it's active, it accelerates. It's like going from 30 to 70 in your car. So, and then of course, Capricorn is a correlation with time and space. So when we run Uranus through Capricorn, we have a collective dehydration of iodine. And as a result, our perception of time quickens. It's that simple. So Jupiter directly correlates with the thyroid, growth hormones that emanate from. Also correlates with the sciatica nerves. And the sciatica nerves emanate in your lower back, come down through both buttocks, down the center of your legs, culminate in the feet. Now, there's only one treatment for sciatica problems, by the way, and that's one herb, wintergreen. Jupiter has a co-rulership, of course, of Pluto via the prostate. The Kundalini gland itself, by the way, is of course Pluto, and that is a very real gland. Jupiter correlates with the coordination of the body. As an example, when you find Jupiter retrograde, all too often the person's got a deficient level of iodine from birth. It's a systemic issue. And you will have one of two effects typically in such people. Either extremely thin bodies and or excessively big. Sometimes you'll find stunted growth in Jupiter retrograde folks, and or the reverse, giants. All growth hormones connect to Jupiter. Which is why, again, this Pluto and Leo clear out is because they're having a problem aging, they're investing themselves, Pluto, Sagittarius, into growth hormones. Chakra system level, Jupiter co-rules the sacral chakra with Neptune. And you can now see in the context of countries like this why the entire issue of sexuality has been incredibly distorted, overly magnified, overly glamorized. And it's why you all of a sudden have films about sex, pornography, the whole industry, and the rest of it. Comes right from this chakra. And of course you see the happy linkage to Neptune. We can get sexual diseases, obviously. But it's also serving to remind us, like we said in the beginning, that sexuality is meant to teach the soul, remind the soul, that it's a co-creative reality with God, Neptune. It's also why, don't you find it rather mysterious that in India, we've got 7 chakras, why is it that the sacral chakra connects with Krishna? In India, it's called Krishna's chakra. Now think about that.
Is that the small of the back? Where is it located in the small?
The sacral chakra?
Yeah.
It's 1.5 inches above your root chakra. Connects to your genital area.
All right. That'll work.
And don't you find that curious, given the fact that so many patriarchal teachings are trying to put down the sex thing, even most forms of Adamic thought, and all of a sudden Krishna's linked with this chakra? Think about that. And link it with this issue of soul being taught or remembered to remember as a co-creator of reality with God through the sexual act. That's why. Other things that connect with Sagittarius are simple, nice things like humor, laughter. Laughter, humor is a Jupiter-Sagittarius thing. And there again, you can even determine the nature of one's humor by checking out the totality of the archetypes. And myself, you know, Jupiter and Scorpio as an example, I have Gowell's humor. And if I get a little bit too much drugs in me, well, it becomes really Scorpio humor. You've heard some of it. The Klaus jokes. About toilets.
With comedy and tragedy, the two sides of the same coin.
Of course.
Saturn would be the other side.
Right.
Thank you. A lot of black people and Jewish people wind up as comedians because they feel more pain, having forced to feel more pain.
And why is it that so many gay people are comedians? Same reason.
And so much of humor is self-deprecating.
Right.
That's the way you get people to notice you.
That's right.
Stop looking at me.
So humor can be a compensating behavior.
Yes. But let's face it too, when we connect it to the health axis, verbal pricing, square. This is why so many people have begun to realize that humor is critical to the health of the organism. That humor is an actual healing vehicle.
Like Mark in the corner and I were talking about yesterday, how about that actor that healed children in a hospital here, just by his humor, by making them laugh. So there's one child that actually recovered from the brain tumor because that child had been laughing with him for days.
No.
We just don't remember his name. The actor.
Well, that's what's so neat about this Pluto and Sag souls that are being born. I don't know how many guys have been around these folks yet, but golly, I mean, what I'm observing is, first of all, an incredible leap in evolution. And many of these souls, roughly, I would say, 30% maybe, are born with an amazingly developed wisdom. And so many of these Pluto Sag babies are beyond being evolved. They're just, when you're around them, you just have this naturally good feeling. Like they're already complete people, even though they're 1 and 2. And what I'm also finding out, which is interesting, is that these Pluto Sag babies are enjoying being babies. It's like they're aware that they're a baby. And they're simply enjoying it. Allowing themselves to be a baby. As if they already know it's only going to be a little while, so they might as well enjoy it. It's really amazing to observe.
What age frame is this?
Pluto and Sag. Pluto went into Sag in 94. 93, actually. No, 94.
You think their natural magnetism has to do with Pluto in Sag?
Yes. Sagittarius is an energy you generally will feel good around. You just have an instinctual feeling that this is good for me. And that's why one of the things you want to look at in synastry is the Jupiter connections. To see how the people really feel around one another. I just want to, do I feel good around this person? Do I not? Is it relative? Just a real simple thing.
So the souls that are being born since 1994 until what Pluto and Sagittarius are actually very wise people.
Right.
Maybe they'll kind of change.
And you also can laugh. I think the whole thing, you can laugh at yourself.
That's Sagittarian strength.
Does Jupiter in
in Sagittarius, this own sign, being like conjunct an ascendant that also has Sagittarius, does that make a person's ego like larger than?
It can be called the inflated ego syndrome.
But it can based on the rest of the chart, obviously.
Yes, of course.
So you can't tell the
That's right. So, sexually, Sagittarius clearly does not lend itself towards monogamy. There's always, of course, the desire for the next quest, the next adventure. Does now be called a sexual adventure. Sagittarians generally are extremely good lovers. Why? Because they also bring levity. Levity. Sex is a good time. You know, get around Capricorns and sex can be really heavy and really serious and but that's their erection. At will.
Cancel it into there. Doesn't take sex in my daytime,
we're laughing. We're doing that. How many other times do you remember laughing like this? You see how it works? Just bring it into vibration. So, so yeah, they can really bring levity, lightness to the sexual event, and it becomes a good time. This is the point. Sagittarius can be very adept at tuning in to where their partner is at. Jupiter connects to the need to give, to share, to teach. At the higher evolutionary levels, Sagittarius sexualized can be a sexual teacher. Teach about natural sexual laws, for example. I have Mars in Sag. Like Aries and Leo, Sagittarius does not care where a sexual event takes place. It can be anywhere.
Or a fight.
What?
Or a fight.
A fight?
Or a fight. Well, it's the Aries that don't care where you are when you fight.
Well, nor is Sagittarius of itself concerned with durational sort of sexuality.
What?
Durational.
Oh, durational, okay.
Actually, they get bored. That's gone on too long now. I want to do something else. So they just want an intense quality experience and auspicious thing. That's the way it works. One of the problems, by the way, in men with fire signs emphasized in sex is what's called the, and this can also include Sag, it's called the pre-ejaculation syndrome for men. And the reason is that they can become so supercharged with the thought of the sex that's about to occur that the supercharging prior to the event overheats the sexual nerves, fire, which then causes the pre-ejaculation thing. Conversely, fire does not like to experience failure. Often, not often, but in some men, the very same dynamics correlate with impotency, based on the fear of failure. Sagittarius clearly is given to all kinds of sexual adventures. They will not preclude any sexual possibility unless it is degrading. You know, sometimes when you're doing your work and you find ninth house emphasized, and when Pluto is also in that ninth house, and this is how I connected to the Pluto and Sag crowd being born. Some of these souls are in fact daemon souls. Daemon. And again, this is a nice Latin word, the definition again of which human soul that fuses, unites itself with the totality of nature, specifically the world of animal and plants. When the fusion is made, that soul becomes a messenger of God. See, this is something to truly understand, because when you're around those types, when this ninth house is emphasized, that's going to be an incredibly alienated soul. Alienation as a phenomenon is Sagittarius. Now imagine the inconjunct back to Cancer. The point here is these folks, the only time they feel at home on this planet is when they're in nature. Anything other than that, absolute alienation. I don't belong here. Let me out of here. And with those folks in mind, because these few people via the Virgo square will have this great inner sense of aloneness, but it's the sense of missing their home. And these souls emanate from another star or planet that the American Indians call the dog star, Sirius. And what you want to do with these folks to reconnect them to their home, and you'll see the magic in this, you have them get out into the night sky, locate Sirius, and let their eyes become one with the light of that star. An absolute sense of going home. It gives them more of a willingness to stay here. Questions?
Jeffrey, could you say something about the difference between the experience of 11th house or Aquarian alienation and the Sagittarian or 9th house feeling of alienation?
The alienation of Sag is the entire planet, with the exception of nature. Alienation as Aquarius is relative to various groups of people.
Could you speak briefly on the inconjunct, just briefly, the inconjunct angle?
To
Inconjunct.
the nature of? The nature of it? We'll get into that when we get into aspects, yeah. Because it's best explained in the context of the phases that take place in.
When you mean the house emphasized, do you mean there's a lot of planets there, or a specific planet maybe?
An emphasis in a house is 3 or more planets.
3 or more planets.
Any other questions on effervescent Sagittarius?
They tend to be competitive or non-competitive?
Sagittarius? Quite competitive. At least as that's linked with the patriarchal reality.
Because I don't know, because I'm a Sag and I play sports. I used to play sports a lot when I was younger. And I would start off being very competitive, but then at some point if something funny happened, I would start laughing my ass off and like ruin the game. That's right, I was just curious.
Right. Well, that's the humor and all that. Sagittarius sees the vision of the absurd. I always see the vision of the absurd. That's what ignites their humor.
These times it's the saving quality.
Huh?
And these times it's the saving quality.
Okay, any other questions on Sag?
The kids who are born with, you said the people who get homesick are the kids who are born with Pluto and Sag, or anybody who has a 9th house?
I'm saying a certain percentage are these daemon souls. And it really creates this, not only wisdom, but it creates this existential void in the sense that they don't know where their home is. Okay, let's see. I think we'll end right here because I want Uli and Mark to present you with what are called the planetary method of interpretation. and to allow maximum time for that to be developed, because as you know, it's a really efficient system. So I really hope you can get the people working with it. So let's allow maximum time for that, because I can get through the Capricorn through Pisces very quickly tomorrow. So, is that okay with you guys?
Yeah.
Okay.
We start like teaching this planetary method that is indeed very effective. Nevertheless, I mostly use it more like a philosophy. I'm more like hooked onto these houses and rulers of that. Yep, according to questions, because I let, clients ask questions, or, it's better to respond to questions than start like just giving a reading, and you might talk about this and this and this and that, and the client wants to know something totally different, But are there any questions from like yesterday and today regarding to Jeff's teaching where you were insecure to ask, or where, if yes?
I have one.
Yeah.
Way at the beginning. You mentioned about how you have above the wheel a planet in below the wheel houses.
Are you talking about?
Say an above the wheel Sag in a below the wheel second house.
Okay, that means planets in what I call the winter signs, yeah, or like starting from Libra till Pisces, but you find them in the individual chart below the horizon. Okay, what's the question?
What does it mean?
A good picture for that is, keep in mind that these what I call winter signs have a lot to do with social, but more like in terms of very orientated to not only myself. You know what I mean? The build-up of in consciousness, if we want to see it linearly, from Aries to Leo is the build-up of subjectivity. Necessarily so. From Aries till Leo. Our signs / houses, 1 till 5, where we build up our personal subjectivity. The sign Virgo itself being a transitional time, or a transitional sign, so is the 6th house. To now create the upside-down dynamic, meaning crises, to learn the major lesson, Virgo or 6th house, humility, which deflates everything which is Leonian overblown. Yeah? I'm the center of universe, Leo. Yeah? This is necessary, Virgo 6th house, to prepare the consciousness that there are others, Libra. And with Libra till Aquarius, we built up what we could call the objectivity. After this kind of purging process of Virgo, learning humility, that I'm not the center of the universe, that I'm a part of the whole, that I want to use my personality and capacities, Leo, to serve, Virgo, the whole, polarity point Pisces, is a preparation, yeah, that at a certain point ignites the desire that is then established in Libra to be there for others, meaning the energy is now totally towards the others. Comparison, giving, learning to receive, learning when to give and what to give, not from a Leonian subjective point of view. Yeah? My favorite toy, Leo, you must like it too. Got it? Okay. That's Leo. Yeah? So, God, I'm losing myself. So from Libra till Aquarius, we built up objectivity. That's what I could call like social focus. Does not mean that we forget about ourselves. Libra tends to forget about itself. That's why the polarity is Aries. To always, learn the lesson of balance, cardinal, learning the lesson, not having balance, but learning the lesson of balance. The big secret of Libra is to learn that the very center of balance, think of a scale, is ever shifting. Yeah? Because we live in a universe where we're in a constant process of becoming. So there can't be a constant center anywhere. Sometimes the focus is to take care of your kids, sometimes of your health, sometimes of your work, sometimes of just not doing anything. If you focus this inner need, inner Venus, Taurus Venus, in your interactions with others, you create a lifestyle that is balanced, even though you're sometimes more, with yourself, with others, work and all that. And from that, we built up via Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, that we come to the energy of Aquarius, the archetype of objectivity, meaning to be able to totally detach. Yeah? Which on the one hand is a wonderful gift, because you're then the observer, without seeing the things through the emotional filters. You know? Because Aquarius is a pure air sign, which is yang, you know, and fixed. But on the other hand, because of the inherent inconjunct from Aquarius to Cancer, you know, that very often gives a cold by-taste. You know?
Okay. What is that?
Hold on. Yeah, okay. And with Pisces, everything comes to culmination, to an end. You know? It's like cosmos inhaling again, what has been inhaled with Aries. To then prepare the next cycle, starting with Aries. Got it so far? Now, if you have like planets in these, what I call winter signs, from Libra till Aquarius or Pisces, you find them in your personal chart, below the horizon. That means we have the signs that have to do with objectivity or orientation to social and other things that are, you know, where you are part of. But yet it's in your chart in the subjective houses. You know? And the best picture I've ever heard of that, of course coming from Jeffrey, is like a little, is it called Cancer? This little crawling, a crab? Living on a crowded beach. Yeah, you know what I mean? The home, you know, always being in a little hole, sneaking out, and all the other people are around, but always retiring in the little hole. Did you get the picture? Yeah? So that's very much. If you see an emphasis in the signs of the winter, houses that are below the horizon. Yeah? Loves to interact with others, but always needs to go back to take care of itself too. Yeah? The opposite would be if someone would have emphasis in the springtime or summer signs, from Aries to Leo, maybe till Virgo, and you find them above the horizon. That's someone where every personal issue is linked to social things. You know what I mean? There's almost no retirement. In order to feel personally, subjectively well, you need to spread out, i.e. becoming a teacher, i.e. a politician, i.e. you know what I mean? A therapist, 8th house. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Great.
Well, starting with Libra, could you say Libra would be the first interest in another person, as opposed to Aquarius being interested in all people?
Well, see, the interest for other people starts much earlier. Actually, it starts with Aries.
All right, at the beginning.
At the beginning. But the focus on the other people is now to learn something about myself.
All right.
Yeah? To via the comparison with others, to get an idea, who am I? In Taurus, the same. Gemini, the same. Yeah?
Okay.
But with Libra, the focus starts like to be interested, okay, who is the other one?
Right. Okay.
Okay? So I don't take myself so important. And with Aquarius, yes, you could say that it's the interest, you know,
All of humanity.
in all of humanity, but yet because of what Jeff said about the alienation factor, very often we have the archetype, because it's an air sign, of like-mindedness in Aquarius.
Looking for people
That are like you, that are very much like you, of like mind.
throughout the 11th house.
Yes, or Aquarius. And then very often you detach from everyone who's not like you. But that goes back to the archetype of Aquarius, the archetype of grouping.
Would you find Aquarius prejudice from that perspective?
What does prejudice mean?
You said finding like-minded people, liking to hang around with like-minded people.
Yeah, but that, you know,
They exclude all others, leading to some sort of prejudice
yeah.
against people.
Yeah, Aquarius, very much like Leo, is very narcissistic. Yeah. Think of the Lions Club or Rotary Club. Yeah.
That's Aquarius.
Well, it's a club.
It's a club, 11th
Yeah.
house action.
Yeah. It's, you know, it's being together with people of like mind, or a bowling club, or the Republican Party. Yeah. But it all has something to do with, very often grouping gives us a feeling of security. That's one archetype of Aquarius. But there are some folks that have the Aquarian courage to totally individualize, meaning to detach from the mainstream, Capricorn, and only start friendships of total like mind. Yeah? But Jeff will get there tomorrow when he goes through Aquarius. Okay, good. Any other questions? No? Everything perfectly clear.
On the way.
No, I would just love to bypass, because I don't like to teach this planetary method. Not today at all. But we do it.
No choice, huh?
No other question? Oh.
I have a question that for me still is not very clear, not totally clear on the way. I don't clear yet about the difference between the sun sign and the ascendant in terms of personality. Because I understand so far that the ascendant carries your instinctual nature, yet everybody, in terms of astrological seems to concentrate a lot on the sun sign, like, you know, out of the astrological realm, on the horoscope, the sun sign, da-da-da-da-da. So I'm wondering what energy carries the sun sign versus in relationship to the ascendant, actually.
Well, the first hint that I would love to give you is, like, forget about this, what other astrology things say. Because they're mainly defined by a very patriarchal point of view. Meaning to cut off, think of my famous eggs in the kitchen, yeah, to bake a cake. They only take the sun sign and try to make your whole personality fit into that. Probably after me explaining this planetary method, yeah, it becomes more clear. I mean, just ask from this point of view, why do we look onto a whole chart if only the sun would be important? You know what I mean? But to respond to your question, the ascendant, as Jeffrey said before, the ascendant, i.e. the archetype of Aries, is the archetype of what is in the process of becoming, which has not a clue, meaning no concept being Sagittarius, but it's just relating to its inherent subjective instinctual nature in the process of becoming. Yeah? This is the area where we are becoming, where we have no concept, and very often where we're not even aware of it. Yeah? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We become aware as older we become, square to Capricorn or 10th house.
That's why they say as you grow older, you become more your ascendant.
And this is what I fight totally, this statement. Because I think as older you become, because old has something to do with Capricorn, you become, if so, your 10th house, your Capricorn, and your Saturn. Because we're in a process of aging in a time-space universe. Capricorn. Yeah? But you become more aware about who you are. Yeah? Like, for instance, when I got in today, still being like in my own little headspace, yeah, and had a need, my Aries rising had a need, yeah, to do my own thing. But my 7th house custs, some people wanted to ask me some questions, but I felt disturbed by that, so I became Aryan archetype. Just like, leave me alone. Mars and, yeah, you know what I mean? By those experiences triggered out by others, I learned something about me. Yeah? Now, because my Mars, ruler of the ascendant, is in the 10th house, the feeling of guilt was given afterwards. Okay?
So, your capacity for your self-honesty is your Sagittarius.
Yeah, exactly.
So the sun actually carries the energy of what you already are, or what you're in the process of becoming.
No, the key word for the sun, next to the word vitality. Vitality, in terms of radiation of your personal energy. Okay. Keep in mind, the sun is very much like Leo. You know? That's like our energy field. Okay? And also, in what, especially where you find the sun, what house and sign in aspects, where we get energy, where we get energized, where we revitalize and renew our system. Renew our system very often. Keep in mind, Leo has a square to Scorpio and to Taurus. Sexuality for most people is a natural way to renew the system. Yeah? If done, Leo. Yeah? Light. Fire. Yeah? May just respond. No? The other key word that is best to understand the sun is the integration factor. Meaning, how do I integrate everything in my life? Everything in my life. Yeah? To a point of view of center, of personal center. If a Sagittarius sun and a Scorpio sun, yeah, walk along the street and they see something happens in their life, whatever them it is, the Scorpio sun will integrate it from probably a point of view of why is it happening, and going into the deep emotional kind of, figuring out the deepest motivation. The Sagittarius sun, seeing the same kind of thing, will integrate it from a Sagittarian point of view. There must be a reason for that. Yeah? A little more like optimistic kind of thing.
But then
philosophical. Yeah, exactly.
But then the ascendant also kicks in, and it's a mixture. You could have a mixture of both towards the...
Okay.
Yes.
just take this example for me this morning when I walked in, yeah, and me being in my Aries energy, yeah, then that interaction with my 7th house cusp triggered out an Arian reaction, yeah, that I had to take care or responsibility, Mars in Capricorn, rule of my ascendant, yeah, for my instinctive needs as they were right now. Yeah, my physical body, while people walked up to me, was like defensive. Yeah, so instead of feeling guilty, yeah, taking responsibility. It's just the way it is because I'm in a process of becoming. Make sense? The way how I integrate that event with my Sagittarius sun in the 9th house is how I do it right now.
Exactly.
I teach about it. Yeah? I give it a philosophical meaning. Did you get it?
Totally.
Okay, that's the interaction between sun and ascendant.
Honest about it. You know.
Yeah, of course. Yeah? And, yeah, okay, got it. Okay. So don't let yourself screw up by these happy cookbooks. You know, a Gemini sun is always like that. An ascendant like this is always, no. Because the next step would always be to look at the ruler.
Yeah.
Or with a sun aspect. A Sagittarius sun with Neptune on it and Uranus on it, or it doesn't work, but Neptune on it, you know, and maybe Saturn somewhere, is totally different. Yeah? Or a Sagittarius sun in the 6th house is totally different than my Sagittarius sun. Yeah? Okay.
You spoke of the ascendant as the beginning, and the beginning not knowing, right?
Not as a concept.
Okay.
Not as a concept.
And that as the 10th house Capricorn coming to some point of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And so the transits of Saturn could, as it goes around every 20 years, to tell you about your progress from grade school, high school,
even if we wouldn't have schools.
college,
Yes.
graduate work.
See, it goes...
Like a time clock. It's like a clock.
Exactly.
Time.
Yeah. Because as Mark stated it with his example about the cardinal cross, can you remember?
Yeah.
Aries being naturally linked to the cross of Cancer and Capricorn. Yeah? In the moment of birth, we experience us instinctively as all of a sudden being there as an individual, but having no clue. So my keyword that I give to Ascendant very often is individual. Yeah? It's a feeling of separated from the others. Yeah? Which is triggered out by the square to Cancer. All of a sudden having a stressful square experience, not being nurtured by being in the womb. Yeah? Which ignites insecurity. From that moment on, Cancer, we experience, of course, nurturing, yeah, by mother or early child environment. And now, around the 7th year of life, around that, what is square of Saturn's cycle. Yeah? And we're dealing with squares because we're dealing with the cardinal cross right now. This is the moment when the child more and more becomes aware that it's aging, meaning that its lifetime is limited. And by that awareness, triggered out by whatever, it starts to develop an interest into what is daddy doing at work, where's the United States, where's Germany, why do we need a passport, you know, all those kind of Capricornian kind of things. But in the first place, it becomes very much aware that its lifespan is limited. And by that kicks in the inner emotional process, Cancer, of aging, emotional aging, which goes more and more and more to Capricorn. Means that we learn in the process of becoming Aries, or all cardinal signs, to define our life as an individual in the context of society. Where can I take, or in the inner relationship, how can I take responsibility for my own inner emotional nurturing? Yeah, that's what I define a mature person. Yeah.
So young people are anxious, little ones are anxious to grow up. They can't wait.
Yeah, that's because it's you know it's they put themselves, Capricorn, under time pressure.
Right.
And with these, so what you said about the Saturn return, it's, you have to see it in the 7-year steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is when we more and more, especially when Saturn squares Saturn or opposition Saturn, when we go through times where we are like inwardly reflecting, Capricorn, about our emotional security and how we shall structure our life as an individual, Aries, yeah, in a society, yeah, and where we can guarantee more or less, like, you know, or where we become an authority, yeah.
So Saturn is transiting. Saturn is just past the trine to my natal Saturn and going through my ninth house. So I better get busy.
Yeah.
Stay in school for
But you don't have to force yourself.
it. Just happens.
Yeah. Right. Make sense?
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay. Good. So you warmed me up with these two questions to now get into the energy of this planetary method. Thank you.
Do the houses correlate to the ages, the age of, let's say, the child, like first house? I mean,
There are systems. There are systems. But, systems are concepts, Sagittarius, very often linked with belief systems, and very often belief systems can be linked to illusions instead of looking onto how reality really is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well,
Like, look at-
say about the age of 7 that there's a square to...
Which has nothing to do with the house.
Okay.
Saturn itself takes 28 years, roughly, to go one time through the zodiac. Yeah? Divided by 4, which is a square. If I divide the circle by 4, then I have 90 degrees. Means that every 7 years, Saturn is making a hard or 90 degrees aspect to its natal Saturn, no matter where your 4th house cusp is.
Okay.
This is this is an archetype for all of us. The natural process of aging.
Okay.
Yeah? The house cusp would then show, let's say, Leo on the 4th house cusp, in terms of childhood. Maybe someone who does not want to become, who wants to stay baby emotionally, could be.
Right.
Or Capricorn on the 4th house cusp, someone who is in early childhood, via circumstances of the parents, more or less forced to become already immature, meaning to suppress its inner emotional needs as a child. Yeah?
Okay.
But the house system itself will not tell you much about, the process of time spans. It's more about, the natural flow of planets. There are other systems like Tapman's life astrology. It works.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because like in psychological terms, there's different individuating states that a child or being will go through in a natural state. Like around 7, they do start to do, like separating from the...
But that is caused by Saturn's movement. Since the moment of birth, my Saturn is 12th house Pisces. Yeah. 7 years later, it was in Gemini, and it was making a square to my natal Saturn. Yeah. So by that you can see what caused my my first process of becoming mature. Yeah. And because it hit my Jupiter and was in the 3rd house, it was having to go to school. Yeah.
Okay.
In other cases, other houses, maybe the death of the father. You know what I mean? Could be. Good.
I'm going to make the 3rd cycle. 4 years.
Wow. And the first Uranian cycle.
Wow, I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. Takes 84 years.
Bad old dude in 4 years.
You were born in 1918?
1990.
1918.
I've got a lot of Leo.
Okay, now let me start with this so it's over. I don't need this blackboard, I guess. Do I? Yeah. So I mean, this house method that we've been doing 2 afternoons ago, it's very effective, as you could tell. Yeah. And once again, if you really stay on the focus to go deep into the archetypes and not to flip-flop. So if someone knows that you have a jumpy mind, like me with Jupiter and Gemini, just take all the other symbols away that are not relevant to a question. Yeah? Because then you can jump over there. Because Gemini wants to,
So that's been hard for you,
No.
stick to the subject.
No, I just, when I had time, I just drew like any chart, invented a 4th house, threw a planet in, choose the archetypes of Jeffrey, and made meaningful combination.
Right.
That's just all.
Just do it.
Yeah. And then you do it with another house, and that trains your mind to, in a reading, stay in the subject. And not to always feel that you have to perform more, and then you get nervous, and you jump in the different areas, and you stay on the surface. And I mean, we could see by the couple charts that we did how much information you get out of, a handful of symbols.
Take it to a logical conclusion, always.
Yeah, because it's astrology. There's the word logic within it. Yeah, not astro fantasy. Okay. So the planetary method is another system that does work very good. To me, it's very helpful in terms of seeing how, in what kind of layers the consciousness for that incarnation is like put together. No? Like, all the ingredients that I have, archetypes, yeah, and how I put them, or how they are put together to bake the cake. Make sense? Yeah.
Not doing that.
Yeah. The first thing is, of course, we start with Pluto, yeah, as the slowest planet. And Jeffrey will then probably, surely explain. Oh, I'm just drawing the Pluto. I won't draw anymore. Just for Pluto, for people to see Pluto. That's Pluto. Jeffrey will surely explain after going through the zodiac his method that you've probably read in his book with Pluto, South Node, rule of South Node, Pluto polarity point, etc. So with Pluto right now, what we see is like the soul's desire. Yeah? Where we will later, or Jeffrey will later then explain, how you more define it in terms of previous incarnation, this incarnation, and the soul intention for that incarnation. But as a method, Pluto shows the soul's desires on its journey, on its evolution. Pluto means the natal Pluto in any given chart in house, sign, and aspects. Yeah? Good. And within that, of course, the archetype of evolution. Yeah? What I mean by that is, for instance, aspects that Pluto makes to other planets. Let's say you have a natal Pluto squaring Venus. That shows that everything that has to do with your value system and how you initiate relationships with others, to via comparison, outer Venus, always relearn about your inner limitations, i.e. your value system and your meaning that you give. It's in a constant, stressful evolution. Yeah? The soul has decided to somehow create a tension square to make the Venus things always go through metamorphosis. Very often via Pluto confrontation. Yeah? Make sense?
It's a constant stress.
It's more or less a constant stress. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. That could then bring in another archetype of Pluto, compulsive. With Pluto. Yeah. And with the Venus, it's tricky because we know Venus is ruling over two signs: Taurus, our inner relationship towards ourselves, our resources, the meaning we give in life according to our value system, yeah, and also about the 7th house archetype or Libra archetype, yeah, the projected needs and the need to be needed, yeah, and in the interrelationship of the inner and outer Venus via Taurus and Libra, that we attract what we need, yeah. So very often it could just this little symbol could bring quite a stress square, Pluto square. That very often inwardly, we're always confronting ourselves with our own value system. But because Pluto, being the ruler of a fixed water sign that is yin, very often before we go into a metamorphosis, we have a tendency to build up a resistance against the change. That is necessary to build up the emotional pressure to at a certain point make... The best picture for that is squeezing a pimple. Sorry. But first, it builds up, what wants to be released. At a certain point, it's just a... Make sense? That's like a Pluto transit. I'm sorry, pimples relate to Pluto.
Yeah.
Yes. It is. Because Pluto is the archetype of elimination. Yeah? To eliminate something out of the system that is not needed anymore.
So mucus too?
Mucus? What is mucus?
Stuff inside it.
Yeah, in terms of the elimination, yes, but because it's a fluid. We also have combined with cancer or moon. It's a body fluid. It's a function of the immune system, so we have to go back to the water trine. Yeah? Where was I? See how I'm avoiding to do this method? So, yeah.
The connection of Pluto to Venus, how wide an orb? 10 degrees per square?
Because we will learn these phases, just going to teach the phases. You then will more like measure, is the aspect in process of applying, or is it in the process of separating? Yeah? That means if let's say a square, and you measure that Venus being the faster planet, is already in the process to run out of the square. That means that the soul in previous lives had already done the major pimple squeezing. Yeah?
Yep.
And, sorry. It's graphic. If you see, like, that Venus is applying to the square, if you measure from Pluto to Venus and you come to, let's say, 88 degrees, meaning 2 degrees are, applying until it's exact, then this process is in a built-up of stress. And then with the technique of the phases, you will even see in evolutionary terms the inner archetype of the built-up. Yeah? And for what evolutionary reason? This will become like magic then. Yeah?
Okay, apart from conjunction, where it's right on the money. I have Mars like that. Mars exactly conjunct my sun and exactly parallel.
Okay.
Apply this to Pluto.
Exactly by minutes and degree?
Yeah.
Then it shows that a brand new cycle.
Well, I really wasn't asking about Mars. I was asking, you would give...
With Pluto, a brand new cycle. If it's...
I don't have that, but that's what it would be.
Yeah, it would be a brand new cycle.
That's a conjunction.
With a conjunction. If it's only 1 little minute that the faster one is applying to the slow one, or the sun, then it's still in the process of culminating the old cycle.
It's almost there, but not quite.
Yeah, but it's like, when you move out of a house, and you've like removed everything, which is the past that you don't need anymore, and your last final check in the corners, to then give the landlord the key.
Okay.
Yep.
Good. Very good.
Okay. So in the first step, of course, Pluto making aspects will show just naturally according to the soul's desire and inner security function. Scorpio, Pluto, where our deepest security is. Very often even subconscious security. Yeah? The natal Pluto shows you where you naturally gravitate to when insecurity triggers in. Yeah?
Does the same principle of applying and separating apply to other aspects?
Every aspect.
The trine would be the same.
The same thing. But the trine doesn't have stress.
Yes.
So if you would see that in a trine angle, you would want to enhance the client to more and more embrace his creative ability of self-actualization.
Good stuff.
Because his memory, his subconscious memory, comes from the last square. If it's the first trine. Then you go like, don't stress anymore, just do it because you're meant to be successful.
Okay.
If it's the other trine, the 240 degrees trine, then the trine is built up and then the square will come. You will make a different kind of support. But you'll learn that in 1 or 2 days from Jeffrey. Yeah? And then we're going to chitter-chatter about it more. Yeah?
Yeah.
So Pluto being the archetype of soul's desire, in the inner conflict of the soul on the one hand to define what the soul already knows, what the soul already knows, yeah, and has a tendency to attach to that for inner emotional security reasons, and on the other hand, the need to evolve, because it's a water sign. If water stands still for too long, meaning holding onto something, it starts to stink. Yeah? That brings in the inner stress to move on. But that very often means to give up old security patterns. That triggers out insecurity. Yeah? And very often Pluto operates in terms of evolution by very often making this compressive kind of energy. Yeah? To first bring it up like the pimple and then to release it. Yeah? And therefore very often we would have like compulsive kind of things.
So it actually has to do a lot with change.
Yeah.
More so than...
It's the archetype of evolution. Evolution. Evolution is change. No?
But the Uranus energy also brings a lot of change.
Yeah, but more like throwing a bomb in a house.
Okay.
Yeah? Unexpected. If you have a Uranus aspect or Uranus transit, especially Uranus in transit, you know what I'm talking about because, you know, Earth is shifting. You know?
How about having...
But hold on. But it triggers out a different kind of feeling of insecurity, yeah, than the Pluto transits.
So having Pluto and Uranus together, it's actually a bump for change.
Yeah, but then we have to, if it's like conjunction, you're talking about the generation of the 60s, the first distinguish we want to make is Uranus running into Pluto, or is Uranus separating from Pluto? Makes totally difference. Yeah? Because the one time it's a brand new cycle, the other one, an old cycle, comes now to an end via acceleration, Uranus. Yeah?
Well, could you say about the fact that the two planets that signify greatest change are both rulers of fixed signs?
I haven't thought about that. But probably because, you know, the fixed signs is a necessity on the one hand, you know, to keep things established. But on the other hand, the natural law of, you know, creation and of evolution itself is to move on. The only security is, or the only
absolute is relativity.
yeah, and the only thing that you really can rely on is change.
So ultimately, I guess we have to learn that that's where our security is.
Yes. Yeah. And that's mainly what we're learning right now with Pluto transiting Sagittarius, a mutable sign. To reunite or be confronted with our belief patterns, to eliminate Pluto, every belief pattern, Sagittarius, which is not in alignment with natural living. For instance, that stupid belief that most Germans have, where, you know, become a teacher and, you know, get like, you know, become an employee of the government because then you have security. You know? And you learn something from this day on, you may not grow anymore. You know what I mean? Because stagnation, fixed signs, yeah, is what these systems want. That's the belief that there would be a goal somewhere. But we're going back to now the Taoistic teaching, Taoism? Tao, yeah? To just walk the path. Yeah? And then you have security. Go with the flow. So, anyway. Yeah.
There's something I don't not understand. I understand the concept of the faster moving planet, but when you look in a chart, like it's like in my chart, Uranus is at 0 degrees Virgo, Pluto is at 10 degrees Virgo. Does that mean it's gone all the way around already? Or it's starting to go in maybe?
No, it's culminating. Pluto's the slow one.
So it's not like this is running into it now. It's already gone all the way around.
Yeah, but it's yet running into it and start preparing a new cycle, but still in the process of bringing the other cycle to an end / culmination.
This is a physical thing. I couldn't...
It's like me taking the plane going back to Germany. I'm not in the States anymore, not yet in Germany. Okay?
I couldn't read it right.
Okay, yeah. You usually take the slower planet except the sun. The sun is always the center.
So for the whole life, she's doing that.
Well, there are progressions where you can see it. But the core dynamic is, yes, like that. Bringing unresolved things to an end. To have space for the new. But you'll learn that with the phases. I don't want to, like, go into that now.
Pluto and the sun. Pluto will always be applying and separating. Is that what you're saying?
Okay. Let's say the sun is on 11 degrees on something, and you find Pluto on 7 degrees, then Pluto is the applying planet.
Okay.
Because Pluto is lower, but the sun is always the center. Okay? That's the only exception.
But what about ascendant and midheaven? Is it something like that? Forget it.
Ask Jeffrey. Because, you know, he wants to teach that stuff, and he shall do it. Okay? But you got already an idea. Okay?
Sun's Big Daddy always.
Good. So did we get the point straight that I was trying to make, that Pluto is the first thing that shows our inner security system according to the soul's desires. Yeah? And its evolutionary reasons. Yeah? The soul desire, period. Now the key thing, the next very important step is, that might probably respond to your thing. The next step after I defined Pluto and house sign aspects, and in a couple of days with a south node and etc. After defining the essential core dynamic of the soul, the next thing you want to look at is then the sun. And the key word now is how this soul desire / intention are integrated in your personal life in this incarnation. Once again, how the soul desire, Pluto, house sign aspects, are integrated in this lifetime in your personal life, i.e. your personal life purpose.
Would it be something like how to fuse them to become one?
Not really to fuse them, but if I have the desire to draw a picture, yeah, to somehow make a certain experience, at a certain point I will then choose one technique. No, technique is the wrong word, but you know, and I have a desire to express something, you know, but just a desire. And at a certain point I will decide, will I write a book, or will I integrate that via a family, or drawing a picture, or becoming a therapist, or a teacher? Make sense? Like my Pluto is in the 6th house, so there seems to be something like still going on to, you know, learn humility, or, you know, to, you know, whatever. And the sun is in Sagittarius. So the soul desire, how it's integrated, is with my sun in Sag in the 9th house. Yeah? I.e. through traveling. Yeah?
That's how you express your soul desire, basically.
Not expressing, but how I integrate. Integration. You've got Pluto in the 11th house, right?
Yeah.
The 5th house, the Pluto polarity point of her natal Pluto, is the archetype of integration. I myself had a big problem to understand, what does this fucking word integration mean? Integration means to bring it into a center again. Make sense?
So that if my Pluto's in the 10th house, trining my sun in the 6th, that public work at a level of personal, integrated through a feeling of personal service.
Yes. Yeah. That the soul has the desire, especially in your case with a conjuncting north node, yeah, that the soul has the desire to go on in the cardinal sign, cardinal house, to learn responsibility and leadership. Yeah? And the right use of power. Pluto in the 10th. To not abuse power. Any power. Which would have the effect of being abused by power. Cause and effect. Yeah? Which the 6th house brings then, you know, the inner, that the personal way how to integrate it in your incarnation, yeah, would be through service / humility / discrimination, what is right and what is not right. Make sense?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Makes sense how this thing works? Good. So the sun is like the very center, like in our solar system. Everything is spinning around the sun. Yeah? But Pluto is the planet who's embracing the solar system. Could you get a picture? Okay, good. That's a new picture. I never did it. What?
Pluto conjunct the sun. If they're both at the same place.
Imagine that. Then, you know, the soul intention or the soul desires are totally integrated. It's like totally in alignment. It's emphasizing incredible life force. Sun. Yeah?
So would Pluto be sort of like the higher self of the sun? But
No. Did you get the picture?
I'm trying. I got the picture of the embracing. I'm just trying.
See, the problem is that there is a belief about center, but the truth about center is that there is no center. But yet, in order to understand that, we need a center to then overcome the center. Okay, yet got it. Okay, that was Aquarian teaching. Yeah. See, most of the time, take like our light in the eyes, yeah, which has a lot to do with the sun. Yeah, when we look at something, yeah, we perceive ourselves as the center. Yeah, when I look onto you, I perceive everything around me. That's very much a perceptive or subjective or center or self-centered orientation, without judgment, just self-centered. Yeah? But on the other hand, the way how you and the others perceive is from a different center. So there is no center, but there is a center. Yeah? We need that center to be able to somehow integrate that what is no center. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now we got it. So we got the word integration. Good. Good. Okay. So as the next step, these are steps, okay? The next step, I'm just drawing these happy planets on it. Oops, what is the next step? The moon? Yeah, but I asked him and he didn't want to have the notes. Usually here with this Pluto thing, we would come to south node, its ruler, then later to Pluto polarity point, to the north node or resolution node, and to its ruler.
Why are you teaching this?
Because Jeff wants he wants to teach this paradigm himself. Yeah?
However, the south node comes after the sun.
After Pluto. With this Pluto, when I say Pluto right now, this is integrated, but Jeffrey will teach it after going through the zodiac. Yeah?
What is PPP?
Pluto, exactly, Pluto polarity point. Yeah?
I'm repeating the course, but I'm learning almost as much this time as the first time.
And actually me teaching, and this is not the first time me teaching this stuff, or Pluto material or evolutionary astrology, I'm always surprised, that it's brand new to me. Was it you who asked me my energy from?
Yeah.
Yeah, Sun in the 9th house, because it's always new to me. I always learn more via the interaction of the students. Why? Because the 9th house ruler, in my case, is in the 3rd house. Gemini. No? So anyway.
Pay us for teaching you.
Is there a Mars in Taurus? Was it something like that? Is the moon the next thing? Okay. So the sun is like everything, how we integrate everything in this life. Everything. The next step would be the moon. When I say sun, I mean, something else?
No, I just had a thought. I don't know if you're interested in doing this. When Jeffrey did this talk in Seattle, he made examples of many of the planets, places like, say for instance, if you had Venus and Virgo.
I will do that after I explain it.
Oh, I was just thinking that maybe you could take the next part.
No, I don't like to do two things in one, because a lot of students then very often are overwhelmed. I do first this kind of, technical teaching, then the practical teaching, then we put it together.
This is fine.
Okay, first. But thanks for mentioning it. The moon is the next step. What? No? No, it wouldn't be my energy, how I teach. The moon is the next step, shows the emotional, egocentric structure that the soul has created to get a feeling of inner, emotional, personal security in the process of becoming, because it's a cardinal sign, Cancer. Yeah? And via that, the moon is very linked, extremely linked to Pluto, because it's the link of the water trine. Yeah? The moon itself is defined our emotional lens for this incarnation. Yeah? How we see ourselves emotionally, i.e. emotional self-image, from moment to moment in the process of becoming. Moon. Yeah? So put it together, there are soul desires, there is an integration factor, and now there's created the next thing, the emotional security factor on the daily life basis, or better, on the moment-to-moment basis. That has to do, it's all linked to Pluto, to the soul's desire. It's like the soul creating a cake, or like the soul being an architect and now creating its business. 'Yeah? What is the purpose of my business? Yeah? How do I feel well with that in every moment? Yeah? Make sense? Got it so far? Step would be Mercury. Next, the Mercury now shows, relative to all the other things, in first place to Pluto, how a intellectual or mental structure is given in order to be able to communicate that system and to put it into an intellectual order. No? Mercury. Like knitting. Well, is it clear or no?
I don't know why I'm absolutely... Keep going though, I'll catch up.
Intellectual what?
Order.
Order. Yeah.
What system are you
We're coming from Pluto.
So,
Think of a cascade fountain. Cascade fountain? Yeah? The main water comes out of Pluto.
right,
And now it drops into the big thing, the sun.
right.
Yeah? And now from the sun, from that center, we go over to the moon. Here's our emotional self-image in the process of becoming. And then the next picture is, okay, how is it intellectually / mentally, yeah, designed that we're able to communicate our life purpose that has to do with our soul intention and soul desires. And how are we able to, from a mental point of view, embrace it intellectually, i.e. giving it order. Virgo.
This would sort of be the process by which we, the tools by which we incarnate.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's very much like tools. Okay, there's the invisible soul that is existing but not physically existent. And that soul creates a physical or emotional body and a personal integration factor. And one tool for that, for these three, is, for instance, okay, how do I communicate? Yeah, how can I, with my Pluto in the sixth house, yeah, with my intention to improve myself and maybe, you know, make a service to the whole through the polarity point in the 12th house, meant as a teacher, yeah, or a philosopher, sun and ninth, with a constant feeling of not being good enough, moon, in Virgo. Yeah?
Who's got that?
Me. In the sixth house, conjuncting Pluto. You know, the same fucking metamorphosis, you know, as soon as I'm a little bit up, you know, then going like, okay, we can do the next purging. How is that intellectually, mentally expressed and understood? Got it? And in my case, because Mercury is in Sagittarius, I just did it.
So if you have retrograde planets,
We don't go there right now, please.
Well, the sun is not retrograde.
The sun is not retrograde. The moon isn't either.
no, the moon is
Smart ass.
One-upmanship again, huh? Okay, well,
So got this Mercury thing straight?
yeah.
Yeah. The next planet we look onto is now Venus. In this whole inner architecture, according to the soul's desires, and to the personal integration, the emotional image, and the intellectual frame, intellectual or mental frame, Mercury, with Venus we now see what kind of inner value system we have, meaning, or value system / resources. I'm talking about very much right now of the Taurus Venus, meaning the Taurus side of Venus. Yeah? What kind of value system and resources are now given in order for that whole system built up to give a meaning? Census. Yeah? Or how we validate the things in our life, which goes back to, you know, the big creator, the soul. Make sense? Yeah?
In order for the value system we have to give the whole system
A meaning, you know. Venus, Taurus, archetype of meaning. A sense, a meaning. All of us need, in order to survive, Venus / the Taurus side of Venus. We have our senses that tell us what, for our personal survival, is good for us and what not. I love to eat spicy, sweet, and sour. Yeah? Others might have a different need. for another intake of food, according to their vitality. Yeah? According to their Mercury, relative to the Virgo side of Mercury, has something to do with a peristaltic movement. Yeah? So do I have to put in certain foods, supplements, to ignite my peristaltic or not? Can you see? Okay. Yeah?
So Mercury and Virgo would be discrimination, and Venus would be final balancing, or the result of discrimination, or the ultimate of discrimination.
More like the value system that we use to learn to discriminate.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay. But Venus has something to do. Virgo and Libra both are two steps of discrimination. would you
Yeah.
say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If you want to see it this way.
When you get to Libra, are you finished with the discrimination, or does it go on?
No, because it's constantly in your consciousness. In every moment you have to discriminate.
Oh, you have new experiences all the time.
Exactly. You know.
Constantly you have to weigh in balance.
Constantly, your Pluto is active, your Sun, your Moon, your Mercury, and your Venus. Constantly. And all the others too. But now we're giving them, or with this little kind of lecture, we're giving them what their kind of task is. Okay? Where they function in the whole system for this life. And we always talk about it, point out a planet, house, sign, aspects.
Why are you going down with it?
Because, well, go over there too. There's no reason.
Not particularly. All right.
Would you consider your own personal story, and you started out with Pluto and then gone through Mercury, so with your Venus and Aquarius, how would you fill that in?
Oh, okay. Therefore, I need to draw or throw in that I have a Pluto-Uranus conjunction in a new, meaning Uranus is, going away, and it's opposing Saturn. That means one sole intention in this life, one of, like almost a brand new, is to liberate Uranus from all unnecessary limitations, Saturn, that have been enforcing my soul for so many lifetimes for any kind of stupid slaveries, which had created either the feeling of inferior or at a certain point being so pissed to undermine the system and to create legitimate guilt. Yeah?
And Uranus is separating from Saturn also, as well as with the...
Yeah. So, in this term, the sun makes sense that now, everything is based on, like, teaching, but that the very essence, Sagittarius, 9th house, is the archetype of natural law. That means with all the crises and liberations, freeing from Saturn, patriarchal kind of, chains around me, more my sun will shine and shine as more as I integrate the natural belief about the universe.
But then you hit the moon.
Then I hit the moon, which then triggers out in emotional moments, metamorphosis because it's conjuncting, because I always have the feeling not to fit in anywhere, okay? To then integrate that, this is the major planet, the sun, to integrate it again, that even if I feel like homesick or not good enough or whatever, to look at it from a natural point of view, Sagittarius, And therefore to always, in my inner dialogue and outer dialogue, in the books that I read or that I don't read, because, Mercury is in Sagittarius in the South Node, I quite stopped reading books. If I want to understand something, I go into nature. Mercury in Sag. To then, Venus. Venus, in my case, Barbara, Aquarius, 11th house. To always then objectify my inner values and to give myself the courage to liberate / to rebel against everything which does not allow me my personal freedom to love myself for what I am. Goes back to Pluto opposing Saturn. The constant guilt trip enforced by religious teachings in previous lives, South Node, of how one should be and not how one is.
I guess the only part I didn't understand was when you went to the moon. And can you just repeat that part?
In my chart?
Yeah. When you started feeling not good enough, or...
That triggers out on an emotional basis crises as more as I understand natural law. Then I see my private life. And that triggers out that need, the emotional need for a metamorphosis. My moon is running into Pluto, meaning is applying to a conjunction to Pluto. That means that the ego is always, or the egocentric structure, in unpredictable times, needing to then retire from outer world because an inner compression happens, yeah, which can be, for other people quite, too intense, so to speak, Pluto, to then create a metamorphosis, to eliminate habits that cannot, that hinder me from integration. Make sense? So does the Venus make sense in this case? But in the same moment, because I wasn't finished with the Venus in your natal chart, now I'm talking about the Libra side of Venus, shows also how in this system that we have built up, relative to the soul's desires, how in this system we now have a need to attract other people. What kind of people do I need? And especially Venus, the outer Venus, what kind of desires or needs do I long to get met by others? In what? Yeah? What kind of needs do I project onto others? If I'm hungry, expecting this person to come home. Maybe because of my value system, Taurus Venus, because I have started to have the belief that others need to feed me. Could be. Yeah? Then I'm projecting my own inner self-sufficiency onto others. That will create, in conjunct to Taurus, Libra Taurus, crises. Yeah? Make sense? But I don't want to go there. So the Venus shows not only our inner value system, what we get meaning for in order to survive, and what kind of capacity/resources we have to survive, but also how we attract other people for that, and how we can give what we do have, for others, relative to this whole system. If you don't understand Pluto, nothing else makes sense. Makes sense now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even though you mentioned integration basically around the sun, it seems that as you go along the line, then in order to be integrated with the soul, there would be a need to for healing and alignment between the whole planet, or the whole energy of the planet in these aspects.
No?
No.
Doesn't have to.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, to do certain Venus Aquarius things, that from a moralistic point of view might look like very kind of, strange. But it's my natural function that the soul has created in order to, relative to its desires, to liberate. Make sense?
Yes. So actually the actual function of the soul would be for you to act on the energies of whatever each planet has.
Yes.
Okay.
And that makes you.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how much is this guy going to charge me to give me some personal lessons? You.
Uh-huh.
My Venus is in Gemini.
Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah.
So where Venus, you're looking for what you can get from another person.
Relative to your inner value system. Relative to your inner relationship to yourself, how you validate your needs and your resources.
I've hooked up to quite a few Geminis in my life as personal friends.
That's true. No? Okay. Did you hear him? He needs Gemini energy. That's a Venus statement in Gemini, doesn't it? I need Gemini energy. Venus and Gemini. Okay.
Please don't charge me too much.
Oh, no. I don't. Okay. So the next planet, what we have so far is more like, putting the actors together for a certain kind of thing. But now there comes Mars. Mars shows how this whole thing that we have built up, a structure so far, how this is now going to be acted out. How you go for it. How you go for it. The root of the word aggression comes from Latin word aggredere. Means nothing else than going out. Acting out. No?
Initiating.
Initiating. Yeah? Make sense? How's sign aspect? in house, sign, and aspects. Now the next very important. Oops, there was. I have Jupiter retrograde. Oh.
You want me to do it?
That's close.
That's very close.
That's very close.
We understand.
The other way?
We get it.
You want to do it?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Well, I'm looking like upside down. Okay. Now, Jupiter, as Jeff stated with his lecture about Sagittarius, where you find Jupiter is another planet that has like an overall meaning in terms of how this whole thing so far is embraced by a belief system. Or even better, how you have a tendency to interpretation, Sagittarius, and assimilate from a metaphysical or holistic or belief, whatever, point of view.
You know, it's almost like the sun. I was fascinated to see on the trip that came back from Jupiter that chemically the sun and Jupiter are almost identical in their composition. It's just that Jupiter didn't have the mass to create the internal nuclear reaction.
Yeah. With Jupiter, just looking onto the natal chart in Jupiter, you see how the overall interpretation or belief system functions. Yeah? That's like, very often in our language, mixed up by meaning. Venus gives like more a personal meaning. Jupiter gives like a philosophical meaning, an overall meaning. Make sense? Yeah?
You say Venus is the personal?
Yeah, it's more like the personal meaning.
Okay.
Yeah? When we go into a restaurant and look into the menu, my Venus is activated.
All right.
Yeah? Not my Jupiter. Yeah? But Jupiter then because of assimilation. But how I interpret the reason why I always choose sweet and sour chicken, for instance, yeah, can be seen by my Jupiter. Yeah? Yeah? Or Jupiter shows it. Oh. It's in Gemini. Yeah. And my interpretation is Jupiter is the ruler of my south node because I have so many incarnations in India. I love sweet and sour. I love Asian foods. Yeah. Plus, my Venus is in Aquarius. I love to rebel. I grew up in Bavaria where they eat pork and sauerkraut and this shit. Yeah? I always wanted to eat something else in my family. Rebellious. Yeah? Which maybe goes back to traumas, Aquarius. Yeah? To somehow, via being special, Venus and Aquarius, get a feeling of, personal inner relationship. Make sense? Now we could like...
Jupiter in Cancer, would that be an indication of gluttony? Gluttony? Eating too damn much?
Yeah. That can happen because Jupiter is the archetype of compensation.
Okay.
So now we would have to look, let's say like in my case with a Pluto and other planets in Virgo in the 6th house, always feeling lacking, always feeling inferior. Yeah? And first beating myself down, then I become bitter and maybe striking back. Yeah? And becoming too critical towards others. Yeah? It could be that the way how I then do that is like eating. Jupiter in Cancer. Yeah, could be. Yeah, but it could also be a joyful feeling. Yeah, via eating because stomach is Cancer. Yeah, when the stomach is real full, it's a feeling of endless bliss or joy.
Yeah.
Could be.
I am a glutton, I'll tell you.
You don't look like that. Yeah.
Especially sweet stuff. The sweet stuff Venus?
Yes. Now the next planet is really interesting, where it might take us a time to really reflect about it, which is Saturn. How interesting that I did it upside down. Saturn shows how our consciousness is structured. No? And in the second place, in terms of time and space universe, i.e. aging on this planet, while we are Earth in a physical body, how we will create or structure a life as a self-responsible being that is reflecting this whole thing. Does that make sense?
Right. Maybe you could say that one more time.
Let's say how we structure our life in the process of becoming older, yeah, to structure all that, yeah, to manifest. Thank you, yeah. But it's not like this, but it will be a process, a Saturnian process. Let's say someone would have Saturn in the 8th house. All his other planets, he will now probably go and structure that via a intimate relationship. Could be, yeah? Yeah? And that intimate relationship is reflecting not only all these things, but also how the own consciousness is structured. In the 8th house, very much like a Scorpio thing. Always wants to go on the deepest why answer. Yeah? Does not give up. So now we can imagine how the relationship will be like. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah? That means wanting to have a partner or a relationship that is very, very intense. Yeah? Could be.
Don't say I'm too intense. You'll run away.
Yeah, of course. I've got Moon Pluto. I've heard that before. Moon is private life. Yeah?
I have the Saturn and Cat in the 8th, and it's the focus of the yoga.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah?
Saturn making a sextile or trine with Venus, would that be indicative of sometime in your life you would get involved with a older person or a younger person?
I don't know. Okay. I don't know. But the first place, before you want to define an aspect from Saturn, you have to look onto where is Saturn, because that shows how your consciousness is structured.
Leo, close to my...
What is like your inner gravitation for this whole system? What is the fence around your life? Imagine you buy property somewhere, yeah? And where you make the fence, the boundaries, where you have everything of that be lived. The architecture, the physical architecture, where you know, happy sun is living, happy moon is living, happy Mercury can live, you know, chitter-chat in his little phone room, you know, Venus in his little, like, you know, sensuality room, and, you know, perfumes and whatever, yeah? And Jupiter and Mars and all that. The architecture of your life is Saturn.
It's like the container of all of that.
Yeah.
The house that all these people live in.
Yeah. There's a difference if someone has, like, Saturn in the 8th house, making a aspect to a planet, let's say Venus in the 5th, or if someone has Saturn in the 5th house with a square in the 8th. It's coming from the structure first. The one with Venus not Venus, Saturn in the 5th house has a tremendous need. His consciousness is structured for creative self-actualization.
Right.
Yes?
Well,
therefore, I'm not done yet. Therefore, he will probably attract relationships, Venus, where he's also able to have almost enough space for his creativity. Make sense? For his, I'm the artist. I'm nice. It's fun to be married with you, but now I go into make my creative kind of thing. Make sense?
And the other way around?
But the other way around, it could be because Saturn in the 8th is the consciousness is so much defined and structured to have the intimate relationship and maybe a fear to always lose it. Yeah? The Scorpio kind of thing. Now bring that to a Venus square the Saturn, and the Venus is in the 5th house. That could be that very often he manipulates the partner in order to control the relationship via his own value system, meaning the constant need for feedback. No? That's never good enough, because Saturn in the 8th house will doubt all the time. Make sense? Can you see the energy is totally different? So when you read astrology cookbook, Saturn square Venus. Throw it away.
So you also attract partners who, by doing that, whose creativity he stifles.
Mm-hmm.
Their
Yeah, but I was more coming from the Saturn point of view. Yeah. We also have to look at naturally if a planet is retrograde, because then there's another dynamic. Yeah. Well, Jeff will tell that, but mainly to rebel against that planet. So a Saturn retrograde wants to break free from boundaries. Yeah? A Jupiter wants to break free from outer kind of belief systems. Yeah? Yeah, sure.
Another good thing. So they've always said retrogrades are not so good. You're perceiving them as being actually like for...
Yeah, I don't even perceive anything as good or bad, but more like as an evolutionary necessity. So if you do have Saturn retrograde or Jupiter retrograde, it shows that the soul itself has so much intake of that planetary archetype in house and sign that it's like having a glass filled up with too much, and now you're emptying it, you know, to have more space in it. A Jupiter retrograde will naturally, as old it gets, try to find its own inner philosophy. It will rebel against any outer beliefs, how society defines it, but therefore it goes back to a lot of religious quests, like peeling an onion. Okay, Christian dogma does not work, Jewish dogma does not work, Buddhism does not work. Yeah, this and this, and by that it comes more and more to the inner essence of that planet. Okay, Saturn, looking for a daddy figure or a structure, but as soon as a structure is given, retrograde rebels against the outer structure. Yeah, goes back to the very inner lesson then to accept no outer authority in terms of patriarchal authority, but to re-embrace the inner authority and to create a life structure that is purely unique. You know? That's the reason why a father figure was very often missing when Saturn is retrograde. Or there was a father who pretended to be strong but was inwardly weak. Yeah? Or not emotional available.
Saturn near the first house cusp, well actually close enough to be conjunct the first house cusp, would give you you'd have to structure your life to always be able to break new ground.
The first thing, when you say Saturn close to the ascendant, was that what you said?
7 degrees.
The first thing is, am I close to that door? Yeah, a house cusp? By me standing already in the house or still standing outside of the house?
In the 12th house, actually.
Okay, that's a major difference. Because the distance from the first house, from, zero ascendant, to the end of the zodiac is almost 360 degrees.
I'm not with you quite, but keep on going.
The other one's like 300.
If I go through the room of the 12 houses of a house system, I start in the first house, open the door, come in the second one, open door, come in the third one, okay? And been in the 12th house. So there's a major difference if a planet is like in the 12th house, still in the, close to the first house. That means that planet, in a holistic picture, not linear, has walked already through all the houses. And is preparing itself to start a new cycle. That's a total difference if your Saturn would be 10 degrees further, meaning already 3 degrees in your first house. Yeah? Because then it would have to go all this way along to come to this other Saturn thing.
Question is,
Yes?
does it have to be in the first house? Does it have to be past the ascendant, but absolutely conjunct the ascendant before it has the first house connotation?
Well, the thing is, see, as closer I walk from my car into that house, yeah? The energy is already, my whole energy is forwarding to enter that house.
Right.
But I'm not in the house yet until I'm not on the door. That's how I see it.
Saturn is not conjunct my ascendant.
It is conjuncting your ascendant, but it's a Saturn.
Well, if it's conjunct my ascendant, then that would imply that it's 12th house and first house.
Yeah.
No. Yes?
Yeah. Because the 12th house is a sign or a house of transition. The old wants to end. And everything which will hinder you in the new process is now, in the process of...
So have a 12th and first house connotation.
Yeah. But it's still in the 12th house.
Now,
still think?